Anyone? Anyone want to go first? Sure. Taylor is going to go first. Go ahead and share your screen. I'm going to throw this over by you so people can hear you remotely. You know what? Actually, just come off mute in Zoom and we'll do it that way.
Okay, can anyone hear me? Okay, and can everyone see my screen? Okay, cool. So this is where I've gotten so far in my React conversion for my capstone. Right now we're looking at the what's currently the home page, but it's going to be your main character information page that you're gonna get most of your data from throughout the game. A lot of this stuff y'all have seen before, but I just have some of it moved around a bit, which has been a lot easier now that I have all these done out into components. As you can see, I have this long list of files, which are all each of these boxes in separate components so that I can interact with each of them differently with JavaScript. I have the first few letters of each of these components mapped out so I know what page they interact with, because I have a lot of stuff going on every page. I added these 3 boxes down here at the bottom to handle the feats that you'll acquire throughout the game, what you have immediately equipped to you that you're currently using, and what you have pretty much on your belt or in like a little pouch that you don't have to dig through your bag for. On my nav bar, I've got the bag of holding button working. I have to mess around with some of the CS because I screwed something up in converting this, so I have to figure out where that is, but I got it looking decent so far for this. I have to add drop downs to the armor, which I'm going to have all the items in those as well as the weapons and general inventory mapping off of an array from the API, and then based off of what's selected is going to fill in these different stats on the side here. And I've gotten the combat started as well, so you can keep track of what you have equipped and what you're adding to all your dice rolls and what your dice rolls are as well. And so far that's about as far as I've got in converting it. My next goal is to get my login page set in stone. I think I've settled on how I want that to be formatted, but that's all I got for today.
Where are you at with the API? Are you feeling like you can start diving into that? You feeling like you can start seeing how the data integrates in?
Yeah,
that kind of stuff?
Going over the Star Wars API was super helpful because it's formatted kind of how the one that I'm working with is, where each page brings you more links to get to a different part of the API. So it was nice seeing how we can navigate through that a bit easier. And I just have to reference a couple of things to clarify some syntax on doing that, and then I feel pretty good about it. Now that I have it all in components, I can focus on parts at a time. Awesome. Yep. Yeah, I do have a fetch already hidden somewhere in my files mess, but I just have to move that into the React into things and plug it in where I need it.
Go ahead and then we would like to go now.
I can
Go for it.
Oh,
And I'm going to throw this by you. So pick up and then go ahead and share your screen and say on mute.
Okay. Everyone hear me?
This is my capstone. I was able to connect all the pages. And now I'm working on the API connecting to these drop downs in order to push everything over here. And I finally got the API to actually be working for the farmers markets,
You wanna show the API you got working?
or like I was able to actually just get it to show up in my browser.
Okay.
Maybe. Just that I brought up the data because I spent like 2 hours trying to figure it out at Postman, and it kept telling me forbidden until he said it was missing key on API, and it finally popped it up. But it still says forbidden in Postman. So I don't know.
Interesting. Oh, go to your off app.
Off.
Yeah, I think you maybe have something, you might have something in here that you didn't need put in here. Because the key is in the URL, so if we set this to no off. That was gonna work. Interesting. So it's working in here. And the API key is the same. Here. I don't know why it would be doing that, but if it's working here, there's a good chance that we'll just work your patch. So that's fine to do the next steps if we're gonna.
Sorry, I will try and change microphones so you guys can hear me here. So really good work. Love seeing multiple pages, love seeing you get it over to React, love seeing that you're like diving into the APIs and having multiple layers of integration there, right? So next steps, thinking about, all right, now that I've got that API data, how do I get that in my interface? How do I get that feeding my dropdowns? How do I start getting that information into state? But for this check-in, totally on track. Love seeing you dive in there. Keep up the good work. Who would like to go next? Brandy, am I hearing a volunteer? And then Palash, I'll come to you. What, groaning isn't a sign of volunteering?
But that's okay.
Go for it.
Great.
Got
You're the worst. Okay, right. Sharing things. Ready. I don't know where it went.
Do you want Flash to go and you can go back?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Flash, you're up.
Please take this. I don't know how to make it work.
All right,
No, that's
just
not my button.
split screen.
Flash, can you say something? I just want to make sure we can hear you here.
Do you see my screen?
Oh,
Oh my God.
sorry, you came in as the voice of God. Let's try that again. I turned the volume down.
Do you see my screen?
Yes, yes, you're good.
All right. All right, so let's start with the code. Like this is my app.js. I have set up the browser router. There's components that have been turned into pages for home, entering the details, reviewing the movies, finding matches, and there's a login page. There is another one that I'm supposed to add, which is gonna work on the entire logic behind matching people. So let's start here. This, I designed a logo over the over like past couple days, and transferred everything to React. You go in, register, enter all your details. By the way, this is all in React. And once you register, it takes you to this review movies page. It asks you to pick I have added these two user one and user two inputs just to differentiate between two users, since I have not applied that login and set up a profile functionality yet. So first things first, let's pick a actually, let me get rid of anything that is in the Windows local storage so we can see the functionality better. All right, starting over. You go into, say, action genre. I'll pick user one for this one. And let's say I really like the movie Flash. Transformers was okay. Guardians of Galaxy was good too. All right, then I refresh the page and I go in as user two. I select the same genre again. I really liked Flash. I really liked Transformers, the opposite of user one, and I did not like Guardians of Galaxy as much. Just saying, not my personal opinions. Then I submit ratings and find matches. It takes me to my I'm introduced to my match, and it like the backend code runs and it tells like which movie is the one we both rated, and both of us love the movie Flash. It's not showing both of us did not user one and user two did not like certain movie, because I don't think there was a common one. And once this accomplishes, I intend to open a chat box here so the two users can chat. I'm also working on the backend logic of it, where there's going to be a compatibility score assigned to the two users based on the common genre of movies that they rated, and like how many movies they rated, so like kind of the inverse of it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I have also built like quick sign-in page.
Beautiful.
It's still in the making.
So next up, you're gonna have a whole new world of data unlocked once we get into the database and being able to save that information. Really good use of local storage so far. It won't be a one-for-one swap out between local storage and the database, but I think you will be ready for that next level of API integration and going from there. So love seeing all the functionality. Another one, perfect checkpoint so far. Definitely met all the requirements, and looking forward to seeing what's coming next. So keep up the good work.
Thank you, totally. One question I have is like, if I rate multiple movies, they should like show up here as like multiple movies, or not the last one that we rated. So
Yeah.
we'll touch base on that.
Yep. And that's going to feed into your kind of rating algorithm as well. Because if you can numerically give each one of them a score, that will make it easier to pull in multiples. So definitely can touch base on that in a one-on-one and go from there.
Totally. Thank you.
Who would like to go next?
All right, fine.
Jen, and then Brandy, you can go.
Fine.
Can't get online?
I got it. Mine isn't anything special, but I did get it over to React, so I'm happy about that. I'm still getting that error 404 and I forgot how to fix it.
Just take that home.html out of the URL, and that should fix it.
Okay, so yeah, there's the start page and I got it. So if you log in, you can go, it goes into the login thing, you put in the right credentials and it's going to log you into. See, that's where it was supposed to go to the home page after that. It was working 2 seconds ago.
Take the .html out of the home. Beautiful.
Okay. Yeah, there, that works. Moving it over wasn't that bad once I got used to it. And then the create account just goes to a create account page. But
Nice. So what is next?
what's next is trying to get, so I talked to Jason about it and he pretty much told me, he's like, even with a ton of expert people that code have been like senior coding people, they're not going to be able to do what I had in mind in 24 weeks. He's like, you want to kind of narrow it down to something. So what I'm going to try and make it do is, go through like one of either my Facebook or Instagram page and see if I can get the facial recognition to pick my photo or my face out of any of the photos that I have posted on there. So I can at least just at the end of this class have like, this is what it could do if we could set up the whole missing person database and scan through everybody's stuff. So I just got to do it on like a super small scale and try to get it working with like just one of my social media posts and pictures and stuff like that.
Cool. And keep in mind that that may be slightly out of the realm of like web application development. That you may need to use like more terminal level tools to accomplish that, and that's okay. So we can find a way to kind of like bridge what you're doing in the terminal to whatever you have for your website in your capstone and kind of integrate those two together. So I would say prioritize maybe finding like the right facial recognition tool that you want to use. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an API. You may find some facial recognition libraries that, like I said, are in the terminal, and that's totally fine. So I would say do some research there. Because you've got most of what you need in the website done. And I think that once you get it working in the terminal, you're going to unlock a whole new level of like, oh, now that that's working, I now know what I want the website to look like,
Yeah.
or the second half of it, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, because like I'm stuck. I'm like, I've done all the like CSS and styling I can do, and now I'm like, now what? Now everything is in the back end of it. So I'm like, I gotta figure that out.
Yep. Yeah. So I would say lean into like just Google like facial recognition packages or facial recognition open source or something like that. And see what you can get from there. I was wondering if there's anything that you can do on the like open AI side of things of like running it through the Dolly image generator, but that kind of works in reverse. That's generating an image from scratch. That's not matching two images together. So I would say, yeah, lean into like facial recognition or facial matching libraries. And then if you need some help with that, definitely schedule a one-on-one with me and we can go from there.
Right, awesome. Thank you.
Yep. And if you feel like you're hitting a wall there, just shoot me a message in Slack and I can spend some time on that. Amber Lynn had an API that she found that was like everything that she wanted, but then it was limited and it was giving a CORS error. And we found a way to kind of work around that so that we can start using the data without having all the server side stuff. So if you feel like you're hitting a wall, just shoot me a message in Slack and I can help find something along the lines that will hopefully be able to accomplish what you're looking to do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But good job, met all the requirements, you got your pages set up. I think that once you get through that log jam, everything else is just going to fly together.
Yeah, why does it keep doing the putting the home HTML on it and doing that 404 code? Is there something I'm missing or should have taken out?
You have probably a link that's going to home.html instead of just home.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, in general, other than like public index.html, we shouldn't have any .htmls anywhere in our React site.
Ah, got it. Thanks.
All right, Brandy, you've dodged the balloon.
With all 19 monitors, my God.
So nice.
Only 3. It's fine. Um. I have managed to, in React, get all of my pages up, connected. The only thing I haven't managed, well, one of the things I haven't managed is getting the files set up in React so that the file paths and everything match. But I have everything like linked together.
Beautiful. What's next?
What?
What's next?
What's next? I have, well, link the images and the videos because these I can click on it, but the videos don't pop up like they do in the other before I moved it over. So I have to do that, and then I have to put there's a lot more content that I have to put in there, but I have everything linked up.
Beautiful. Meeting all the requirements.
Yay.
What are you thinking about full stack? What are your full stack features?
What?
What are your full stack features? Your database features.
The search
Uh-huh.
is going to be able to pull up. The search is going to be able to pull up images and videos of signs.
Yep. And what else?
I have an answer for this and I don't remember what it is.
Submit a request.
Submit a request. Yes, I have to make that page work.
Beautiful. Good work. Meeting all the requirements.
Yay.
You know, good
Thanks.
work. Who would like to go next?
I'll go next.
Sure, pass down the line.
There you go.
Oh, I don't know why I said that. Okay, so there we go. So mine is a pet adoption site. And what I'm going to be doing is linking a database into this. So all these pictures will change. Currently, they are my cats. They're adorable. And each of them links to their own page once I make it. We've got adopters because there's going to be 2 separate sides of it. You're going to have adopters who will come in and they'll sign in if they have an account. If not, we'll go here, enter information, submit, and then we'll go to their personal page. So this goes back, and then there's the shelters. In each of them, what it's going to be is a directory. So you're going to be able to claim your business, and once you do that, when you come on here, you create an account. And if you've already got one, you just sign in, and it's a similar setup there. And I think that's about it.
Beautiful. What was your light bulb moment from your capstone over the past 2 weeks?
That this was much easier than the first one I did. And I don't know that I actually knew what I was doing. So there's that.
But now that you've done it in React, you feel more confident about knowing what you're doing?
I do.
Good,
I really do. I actually React's all right. I'll stick with it.
good. I like it. All right, who wants to go next?
I'll go.
Sure, pass the mic down.
Did it. You said adopter shit goes here and I never deleted it.
So
Damn it.
that's a really
I
good
know.
note.
There are times that I put very sarcastic content in during one-on-ones, And I'm not gonna lie, that has sometimes made it to capstone presentations and made it look like you created that content. So just make sure that you do a pass, in a couple of weeks before graduation, and make sure there isn't any very sarcastic cursing content in your projects might be a good idea. Not saying that I've caused those issues before or anything. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Oh, good lord. All right. So here we go. Here we go. So this is my homepage. I'm doing tarot. I still have to work on the tarot card selection, but for now I can actually get you a fortune to come up every time you hit it.
And what are you using to do that?
A const,
Coming from,
a loop.
coming from. What react concept?
I don't remember like that.
The-
Oh, state. Yeah, that's right. I just
Yeah,
forgot. We
yeah.
we just went over this. This is state. Yep. Good lord. I hate this. And I linked to my Dex page. I haven't done much on these yet, but I got them to connect. I have my sign-in page. So they can do all that shenanigans. Yep. It won't do anything yet, but and then you also can sign up.
And what's next?
What's next for what I'm gonna do?
Yes.
I
So
am-
What's next for the world in general?
I don't know anymore. Wow. Well, I'm gonna work on the tarot, API, so I can maybe start getting the cards to pull.
Yes, beautiful. Lots of next steps for APIs, which is
Yeah.
what we like to hear.
Hooray.
Good work. You would like to go next?
Only a couple people, don't make me start calling on you. Shay, go for it.
Give me a second. I gotta get everything set up.
Yep. Oh.
Take your speaker. Whatever it is, mine is all.
Both.
All right. Can y'all see?
Oh, thank you, Doug. Yes, you're good.
All right. All right. So I got not everything completely moved over, but I got the basically the homepage moved over with the images. I got my my new post to show up. Got the link so you can create a post. So I'm just add content and stuff. So then whenever you do make a new post, it could show up right here. So I finally got that to work. This button right here, I was just testing the functionality. Don't click me, I've been clicked. And then I also got a few pages linked. Like this was gonna be the profile page. I didn't get started on moving that over yet. Because I wanted to I still needed to come up with an if statement, because if you wasn't logged in, it would take you to the login page. And if you were logged in, then I would have a separate page where it would show your different profile, like your credentials, username, and the different posts you made previously. And then the new posts I also had. Well, no, I just showed that. But yeah, that's basically everything I have. My next step is besides just moving the rest of my HTML and JavaScript over, is just to have more functionality, come up with pages for like if once the person do log in, what would their profile, what would that page look like? What would the comment section looks like when they want to maybe comment on a post or maybe even create a new post, and maybe come up with like a page for me so I could see like the different posts, how like the whole entire pages and the site or whatever is working. And then I think the last step would probably come maybe find an API for like the different home remedies. So if there isn't nothing listed, they can just click a link or maybe go to a directory where it will have different links to like different pages or URLs for whatever they're searching for, and then it could just take them over to there.
Perfect. Yep, you're in a similar spot where I see you're using local storage, you're bringing in the existing projects, right? We're using that logic from the blog post, making that work with your posts. Coming up, we're going to have the database and be able to store that, make it so like multiple people can make a post and get in there. And then I know a lot of you guys have authentication systems coming up where you're going to need to get that login working and all of that. That is also coming down the pipeline in the curriculum. About 2 weeks from now, we'll do database, but we'll start learning how to build our own API. Then we'll start layering in our authentication and integrating it into our React projects. Very good progress, very good work. Keep up the good work.
Appreciate it.
Ali and Corwin, all that are left.
Okay, I don't know if I started transferring my stuff over yesterday. I'm sorry, I haven't been doing much of anything. Like, I really don't feel good, but I did see how to implement the React router DOM. So I'll just share my screen and then I'll
Go for it.
Okay. Okay, like, let me clear some of this up for y'all because I know every time we open this, it looks so crazy. So this is my little internet browser over here. Got my little week 14 in there, show myself the stuff to see like how it's actually done over here.
Cool.
So this is my my old project. I'm sorry, this is the old project with just my vanilla JavaScript here. So I just was going through, right now I'm in the process of getting everything switched over to React. So like I figured out how to import like that router DOM. I got my other homepage set up. I actually had to go back and delete what I had yesterday and redo it because we weren't supposed to put like the stuff in the app.js folder. So I did make that new home folder, and I got like just going through, I had got like the home stuff in there. I didn't update this yet with my HTML, but I'm going to. I think where I'm gonna start first is just getting all my paths in for my pages. That way I know which ones are gonna be which. And then because I haven't finished making all my pages for my vanilla JS. So I'm gonna do that first, come back, update like what I need to in my app.js, and then I'm gonna start with my components and everything next. So next time I come back for the next capstone project, I'll probably be exactly caught up to where I need to be.
Perfect. And the good news is you're on the right track, and you know, not only are you a little bit behind, but you know exactly what it's going to take to get caught up. And oftentimes that's the more important thing of like, sometimes you're so far behind that you don't know how to catch up. And that's the bigger issue, right? So I'm glad that you're like, you have your reference code, you know what your next steps are. Completely agree with you on getting the route set up, getting those components in there. Do you feel like you see why React is helpful?
I definitely get why React is helpful. I couldn't imagine, honestly, going back through the code and having to implement things over and over and over again. Like, React makes it so simple, especially with reusing HTML code, because for the inputs on my form, on my the graphic organizer page where the kids are going to upload their book reports, all that stuff has like, it's just rewritten code. With React, I'll just be able to have like it'll do like the repeats for me, like for the cards, instead of just like me having to go back and write all that code. And then also what I did want to add too was, so I've been looking into it. I don't think that I'm gonna, like, I know last time we talked about having like the teacher interface where the teachers will be able to, I don't think I'm gonna do that part, simply because I feel like it's gonna get to a point where it becomes too much. So what I'm gonna stick with is simply just having the database, which I can use SQL for the back end, what we're getting ready to learn. Have the kids get their book reports uploaded to that. And then what I'll do is I'll reach out to the district and then have them get have them be able to have access to that database, and then they can pull that stuff up themselves. Because what I learned is that the school district has like a way where the students can use their logins to access like different things. So what I'm gonna do is just implement the open library that's accessible through the district into my website. The kids will be able to access it with their school logins, save it to my website, like everything in the database, like their book reports. And then what I'll do is I'll just create another like I'll create the way for that to get sent to the district. and then that's just like, it'll be done.
Cool. Awesome. Good work. I'm glad you know what your next steps are. Just get to them and feel free to schedule with me if you need help getting over any hump or get stuck anywhere.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Em.
Corwin, you want to finish this off? Okay, go ahead, share yours. And I'm gonna walk this over to you so people can hear you. Oh, sorry. That's just a mic.
Oh, it's a mic for me. Nice. So I was working on this earlier and like all my pages were up, but for some reason, yeah. Take it back up to my account.
Okay, so here's part of the problem. You got this package locked up JSON, and you got it duplicated here. So I'm going to delete this one,
I didn't realize there were two of them.
and I'm going to. Okay, well, that's good. So I'm gonna reopen your terminal. And starting from here.
Ah, it's back. There it is.
Now. Can you share your screen on the desktop?
Yeah. Whoa. Is this your computer?
Share me like desktop on desktop too.
Yeah. I don't know what that is right there.
There you go, that's it, okay. Let me go, stop it, good, okay, let me.
So like I used the contact form that we had from the portfolio, but I got it linked together.
Well,
It was working fine earlier, which is why I'm confused. Like I had it was launching. I don't.
yeah, that's what they always say.
And
Where-
we tried
I
removing
swear.
contact from the equation, and then it started giving the same complaint about,
Yeah. I commented all the
And so
contact
on.
out, and it said about was a problem. Then I commented about out, and then it said it said freaking login was a problem, but I don't have anything on login. So I was like, all right. And then we did import from React as well, and it still was not trying to.
You shouldn't have to do this though. This is like an older error. So. And the slash there. And the. So React a couple years ago, maybe 2 years ago.
Nice.
So.
My bad.
The right over here.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're back. This.
It didn't look like that earlier.
It's hard to work on it. You can't see what you're working on.
Yeah.
I am curious though. I'm going to delete your node context. and take a peek at your active.json. Now, you're on your modern version of React, it's not believe this.
I went through, I've been looking up. Literally 2 hours ago, it was up and running. So that's why I'm just like, I don't know
Trying
what
to
happened.
figure out what you,
The only thing I've done that I've changed, like, I went through and I changed, it was contact us and about us before, and I changed both of those, but as you saw in the code, I went through and adjusted. Like, it doesn't, so I'm like, all right.
So like, we know what the fix is, now I'm trying to figure out why you need that fix in the first place.
Yeah.
So I'm curious.
Like, because I had all the pages were split. Like I had you were able to click on different things at the top. My bad.
Now, see, okay, so let me explain this because it's a good log for everyone to see.
So a couple years ago, it used to be that if you started using JSX in a JavaScript file, it would get confused and it would be like, what is this magical syntax that you're using that has React or has JavaScript and HTML in it? So basically the way React fixed that is they said, hey, if you import React at the top of every file that has a component in it somewhere, we will hijack it and let it understand the voodoo that is JSX by just importing React in. So this error message, React must be in scope when using JSX, just means import React somewhere at the top of the file. And as long as you do that, you're allowed to use JSX. Well, about 2-ish years ago, React was like, React is so popular now, we have a better way for the build and compiling process to know that you're using JSX. So you don't need to import React anymore. The reasoning behind that goes way beyond my knowledge of React. It's like under the hood and the build process and way more than I care to understand. But the consequence of it was that we didn't have to import React every single time we created a new component now. For whatever reason, you have gone back in time and re-enabled that requirement somehow. No freaking clue how you do it. However, for now, it doesn't cause any harm to put this import at the top because that import is happening on all of your pages, whether or not you put it there or not. React's kind of doing that for you. The only thing I can think of. No, you have it in there. So I have no idea why it's requiring you to put this on every component. But for now, it's okay to roll forward with like, hey, whenever I create a new file, I just have to make sure I import React. Yeah.
Even though y'all can't see it, basically with this, it's something similar to what you're doing. It's a gardening website, but it's more geared towards self-sustainability than anything else. Learning which foods grows during what time of the year, what climates are best suited for which foods and stuff like that, what kind of soil type you're going to need to be able to grow certain things at certain paces. Especially up here with the winter being as long as it is, you definitely want to go towards more things that can survive that permafrost that comes a little bit earlier, stays a little bit longer. So that's kind of like the main thing, and just trying to get as much information as possible. And then there's going to be a separate page that'll kind of like have a list of all those. I want to be able to create an API that'll kind of retrieve recipes for each one of those fruits and or vegetables so that people can, like, once they grow it, they can know what to cook from it and stuff like that. So nothing too crazy, but just trying to get people to eat healthier. And I'm also a prepper. So
what's next?
Right now, I just want to get everything linked together. I got my, I had everything set up in my vanilla JS. I mean, not vanilla JS, but vanilla. So once that's done, I just want to get everything transferred over. And then obviously I want to be able to kind of like a blog page in there too, so people can be able to communicate with each other and give tips and suggestions. And then I need an API as well to be able to retrieve those recipes from like Google or whatnot. But that's one step at a time. I'm a little discombobulated as to what how I broke it. It was working like 12 hours ago. Because this is the first time I'm seeing this error. Like I came in here, opened my laptop, went to go launch it. It was like, nope.
The only other thing I'm gonna try is if I take it out to the buggy.
See, now it's not even live anymore.
I shall say.
Oh, okay. I swear I didn't do this on purpose.
If this doesn't fix it, we'll just let it ride because we have to fix, just make sure your imports and not any file, and then that will fix the issue. So for next steps, I would say definitely focus on getting the rest of your pieces over, but then focus on like what's that core functionality, right?
Yeah.
So if it's the blog post, that's fine. Go back to the blog, start doing that stuff.
Well, the main thing is going to be importing all the information for like the vegetables themselves. That's
So-
going to be the hardest part for me.
If that's the case, then start looking into like, where am I sourcing that data? Is that something that I can like start loading in an Excel sheet or a Google sheet and like start building out that data myself?
Yeah.
Or can I go out and find an API that has that data? So either one is fine.
Yeah.
But you definitely want to start thinking ahead on that and building out that interface.
Yeah.
So once you kind of get the rest of it over, that would be the top priority, like what the interface will kind of back in.
Sweet.
Version. Aha, here's your problem. You somehow have React scripts version 2 installed. You're on version 5 of React scripts, which is what was called AIO.
Interesting.
So I have no idea how you managed to go back in time.
I ain't do it.
But now that we have a new version of React scripts, you'll notice I don't have the import here. And come on, you can do it. Your thing is full. So for whatever reason, you had a very old version of React scripts, and the thing that was running the chat itself was so old that it didn't know how to work with the new version of React, and that's why it freaked out.
Yeah, see, that's what I don't understand, because I was working on it last night. And I haven't uninstalled or deleted anything out of my package.
I can tell you what caused the problem. I can tell you the problem is fixed. I
Touche.
can tell you
Thank you.
how you ended up with it.
Max, how did you decide to look for that?
I Googled React, but it don't when you hit React.
Oh, okay.
And I will say, I don't know. Here. I don't know if that's.
This one. Share screen, this one. Oh, maybe I have to stop. Why does it say it's loading? there, here. Okay, so Doug asked a really good question of like, how did I know that this was going on? So I just said React must be in scope when using JSX. And I got an article from 2001, and this is the first one that I read. And it said like, what's going on? And it says, how do you fix it? You put this import up at the top of it. And then it says React version 17 and beyond. And I was like, well, I know I can remove the imports. We don't need the imports anymore. And I'm like, all right, well, I have certainly finished my coffee. I had one before class. Something else is wrong here. So I went back and I specifically said React 18 in my Google query. And that brought up this article, which was 2023. So you have to be careful sometimes, because if you're like Googling, how do I uppercase the letters in a string in JavaScript? Chances are that hasn't changed in the 30 years that JavaScript has existed. If you have an answer from 2008, that's fine to use. But because that last article specifically said React 17 and beyond, that's where I went, wait, what React version are we on? We're on 18. This is a newer React feature. I need a more up-to-date article. So I went in here. Thank you. And it says, what causes the React in scope error? And I was scrolling down here and it says 2 ways to fix it before React 17. And I'm like, no, none of that's right. And that's why I did the search for the import React, because I wanted to make sure we didn't have a lowercase r, which was confusing it. That wasn't the problem. So then I went down and it says use ESLint. And I'm like, no, we did create React app. This looks like I don't understand what this is doing. So if I don't understand it, it's probably not a good fix to implement. Or if it does fix it, then I need to read into it more to understand why it's fixing it. And then I scroll down a little bit more and it says additional 3 ways, and it says update the version of React scripts. You'll notice that I deleted the node modules and the package.lock, tried fixing it that way. And Corwin, now that I'm thinking about it, you did have that extra package.lock.json hanging outside of the folder. Sometimes that confuses NPM because we've got packages in node modules outside of the folder and inside of the folder. And so that could have been causing the issue, which got you on version 2, even though you had no intentions of installing that. So it could have just been, I've got a folder and a folder, and I ran an npm install command in the wrong spot. That generated 2 of them, and that's what caused the cascading error. So I knew we were on version 18 of React. I knew that wasn't the problem. We had already tried to do this. And that, by the way, for everyone is a really good thing when you're like, I've got no fucking idea where to even start on this error. Sometimes it's a good idea to just delete out your entire node modules and reinstall, rerun npm install. That will go back through your package.json and kind of reinstall everything. I don't know if you guys have seen everything that is in the node modules folder, but it is like a very, very long list. Like we're only in the Ds, and all of these packages are what React and the other dependencies of React need. So there is something called a dependency tree, which is basically saying, oh, well, React needs this package, and this package needs this package, and this package needs this other thing. And all of a sudden you end up with like 900 different packages. Now, some of these packages are like little short snippets. I'm just picking one random one here. Okay, this was a terrible example. Let's try that again with throat and thunky. Okay, so this is like a 56-line package, and it's literally checking to see if value is 42. So Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, anyone? No, I'm sure there's an actual meaning behind that. I've just, but it's this little snippet of code that's basically dealing with some thunks. And I'm sure there is a very complicated reasoning behind this, but React may not need thunky to work, but React may need some other package that uses another package that happens to use some funks, and hence we have Thunky. Anyway, the reason why I'm covering all of this is because out of these like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of files and lines of code that are in these files, it's clear that something can easily go wrong here. And so deleting the node modules and rerunning your npm install is basically remapping out all the dependencies and bringing them in. So even though you didn't edit anything in node modules, even though you didn't cause the error, there's a lot that can go wrong there. And that's why we delete the node modules folder, rerun the npm install, and that can clear a lot of the issues. Do we all thunk it? Now we have to. Okay, but let's just appreciate here. Thunky has been downloaded 10 million times this week. So it could be. So it is, Thunk has its own Wikipedia page. Let's just take a moment to appreciate that. Two good questions. One was from Allie, and she said, what's the NPM website? It's npmjs.com. And this is your like go-to source. Whenever you npm install something, it's pulling information from this website. So this is a good way to get information about documentation, find other packages. This is where we pulled like React spinners from. This is when we npm install Sass. Sass is Sass is coming from here. So you can see Sass is downloaded all the time. You can see the usage of it and how we, get going in there. So the reason, the other question that got asked was, what counts as a weekly download? If you deleted your npm modules folder or your node modules folder and reinstalled it, that would count as a download of Thunky. But what also counts as a download is any time that you install React, Thunky gets a download count because React requires this, that requires something else that requires it. So it's not counting exact weekly downloads, like direct installs, but that's kind of okay, right? Because if React trusts them to work, it's probably fine for me to get Thunky in my own code because, because it has so many weekly downloads. Not necessarily. Well, this hasn't been updated in 4 years, published 4 years ago. And it's still used very widely because it's only 50 lines of code, right? So it's not anything necessarily super complex, but it's something that is so well trusted that it probably doesn't need significant updates to it. So there's a difference between an engineer and a developer. And I will go on a little spiel and then we will go on break. And then when you get back, we will do the last of the portfolio setup, which is, hey, how can I click on this link and get to the details page with more information about that? I know a lot of your capstones have that, right? If I click on this link, I want to get more details about whatever that thing I'm clicking on. So we will do that after the break. And then we will open up the floor to any questions that you may have. With all of that said, let me go back a little bit. So I said developer versus engineer. This is very much my definition because in the workplace, this isn't very widely agreed upon. Some companies will hire an engineer and other companies will hire a developer and they expect them to do the exact same tasks. I, however, separate that out. I personally think an engineer is the person who's saying, hey, I work at Google and I need a way to go through 10 billion links and get search results in microseconds, right? The engineer is the one, and I describe it as painting the puzzle pieces, right? They're the ones figuring out how it all works under the hood. They're the ones who are building the frameworks or the packages. They're the ones that are given a complex problem and need to be able to break it down. Developers, on the other hand, are the ones who say, I don't really care how it all works, just give me the puzzle pieces and I'll assemble it together so you have something functional that you can use, right? So they're more in the day-to-day operations, they're in getting project requirements, figuring them out, developing them out. They are using a lot of pre-existing tools. They're saying, hey, I know React. React's a more efficient way for me to build this. I don't necessarily need to engineer React from scratch. Someone already did that for me. So developers are, to use a famous quote, standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Other people have figured out that really complex stuff of how do we efficiently update the DOM and how do we make it so we can integrate our data with our HTML and make it just show up, and how do we make reusable components. And React is not alone there. React went and said, well, Webpack exists and Webpack does all this cool stuff to take my code in JSX and be able to translate that over. I don't need to rethink the entire build process. I can just take Webpack that was built for that and build on top of that, right? Same thing with Bootstrap. If you want to look at a CSS framework, we could write all of the CSS for ourselves. We could build a button and put a background on it and change the font and all of that stuff. But the developers at the engineers at Twitter have already done that for us. So we're like, well, we could re-engineer all of that and build it from scratch, and there's a time and place for that. Or we could think more like developers and kind of build off something that's already existing. And so again, that is a personal definition. You will hear people use those two terms interchangeably. I personally prefer to not think of them as interchangeable, but it is something for you to think about after the program of, hey, did I like getting down and dirty with JavaScript? Did I like building things from scratch? Or did I find it really empowering to say, hey, this whole Bootstrap thing exists. I'm just going to pull it in and build things quickly because I have that existing thing. The world needs plenty of engineers and it needs plenty of developers. So it doesn't really matter what you end up going into. There's also this like stigma around front-end developers, right? Of like, oh, you're a front-end developer, you're not full stack, you're lesser. That's not the case, right? There's way more demand for people who know how to make websites than there is for people who know how to make a full stack app from start to finish. So definitely at the end of the program, kind of have an introspection period where you go back, you look at all of those modules at the top of the schedule, and then you go, well, what do I want to do here? Because you may decide that full stack isn't what you want to do. What you love doing was all of the project management it took to get your capstone done. That's great. You can go on, continue your education in project management, get a project management internship, lots of different things that you can go on from there. So I like to consider myself more of a developer. However, being a developer at a small company has required me to engineer things that are such a big problem that you can't solve it all at once. You can't find something that's already built to solve that. You really need to be able to break it down into small pieces, build out those individual pieces, and then kind of take that developer mindset of pulling all of those pieces together. So it is entirely possible that you are doing engineering and development at a job. And unfortunately, the job title isn't enough to know which one you're truly going to be doing. Which is why it's very important to, just because you read the job description and you're excited about the job description, in your first interview, don't be afraid to probe a little bit into that job description and go, yeah, but what's the actual 9 to 5 look like, right? Like, what am I actually spending time on? Are you going to give me this complex problem and I'm going to have to break it down into pieces and figure out how to solve it? Or are you going to hand me a list of requirements and say, go build this shit as fast as possible? Nothing wrong with either one of them, but it is a different mindset, and your employer may not even be able to differentiate the difference between engineer and developer. So it's important for you to be able to separate that out internally, and then think a little bit more about like, hey, our whole boot camp is certainly more development oriented or developer oriented, because it's like, how do we build a whole thing? Well, there's no way in 24 weeks that we can teach you intro to computer science and computer science, you know, the 200 level, and also pull in all of these concepts of, well, how does an operating system work? And how do we deal with the memory and all of that kind of stuff, right? So our curriculum leans developer, but you can certainly take all of your development and developer knowledge and bring that into a role as an engineer. So just something to think about, and maybe a discussion topic, right, for OpenHack. Get to know what other people do in your community, right? They probably haven't heard me spiel on about the difference between a developer and an engineer. So that's a great thing to ask, right? Not just what's your job title, but like, what is it that you actually do? What is it that you like about your job? What is it that you wish you knew when you got started in your position that you now know because you've worked there for however long? So all really good things to think about when networking and trying to figure out where you want to land. And a lot of people will come to me and be like, well, what should I do? What should I focus on after the program? And the answer is oftentimes, well, whatever someone is willing to pay you to do, that is often the best place to get started in your career, because you may get a job offer that's only doing front-end web development. And you're like, well, I really like full stack. I really want to be doing that. But here's someone who's willing to take a chance on me either at an internship level or at an entry-level software position. Because of that, I'm going to get experience. And the hardest part about building a career is just getting your foot in the door somewhere, is just getting someone to hire you, even if it's at an internship or an unpaid level. It's just getting that first opportunity. Because once you get that first opportunity and you work there, you're no longer an entry-level developer. Even 3 months of experience puts you over that professional hump and gets you into saying, no, I'm a junior developer now. I'm not an entry-level developer. And that's another whole issue in the industry, is a lot of companies will see junior and senior, but there is a big difference between a junior developer who's worked for 3 years and an entry-level developer who's coming out with whatever education they have, whether it's self-taught, whether it's a boot camp, whether it's college. But all of that exists in a vacuum. It's very different to take what we've learned in a boot camp, be handed code and say, hey, we need this. This is going to help our business make money. Please go do it. And that is kind of that first jump, that hardest thing to get your career started is not the education piece. It's not moving up to the senior level. It's not learning team dynamics and communication and all of that stuff. The hardest part for sure is getting your foot on that career ladder, transitioning from education to career, getting over that entry-level hump and into junior. And that's where you want to focus and dive into. Palash, I do not have like a go-to repository of all of the stuff that I have. That is a really good idea though, and something that I will think about and get back to you on.
I can start like noting them down as we come across them in a Google sheet.
Yeah, if you want to get like a Google Doc started, I can just link to that in Canvas, and then we can just keep adding to it.
Totally.
The other thing that I just thought of before your question was there is no pre-reading for SQL. So I will get that together and post that by like tomorrow evening. Will be totally optional. You have no homework this weekend, no required homework. Awesome job on all of your capstones. This is the first time that we've come close to like every single person meeting expectations for this check-it. So ride that productivity into your APIs, into getting the rest of your site done, because the rest of the program goes really quick. And all of a sudden, it's going to be like you have everything that you need to know and 2 weeks to get it deployed and fully finished. So keep the momentum going as much as you can. Start pulling in your API, start getting that showing up. If you aren't using an API, that's fine. You just want to focus on is this user interface as complete as possible so that when I do learn how to do user authentication, when I do learn how to save things in the database, that I can just really run with that and be able to pull that in. So awesome, awesome work. Keep up the good job. Keep your momentum going. I'm going to open the floor for any questions, and then we will go on break. Okay. In that case, think about what you want to see in the second half of class. We're going to set up our portfolio project to do that linking. We're going to make sure we have that concept down so that you guys understand how when I click on a specific link, I get more information about that thing that I clicked on. And then we will open the floor up to any capstone questions you may have. And keep in mind, today is the last day that we slow down. On Monday, we start all new concepts with SQL, a whole new syntax. We learn our last new language, and we are full steam ahead in full stack land before DevOps, career module, and our final week, which is focused all on presentations and finishing up our capstones. Go on break, be back at 7:25. Okay, so we are going to do an example of linking our projects on the portfolio site. And then we are going to open the floor up to any questions. And then Amber Lynn had a question about basically making it so we have a couple drop downs, and then based off of whatever gets selected in the drop down, the API call reruns and filters the results of those items. That might end up taking more time than we have in class tonight. So I will put that together as an example and put it in the code repository so that you guys can reference that. And then if we want to come back to that idea, we definitely can. Or if there's enough time in class tonight, we can look into implementing that. With all of that said, does anyone have any examples or questions or things they would like to see other than the link on the portfolio website?
I would like to see like how to use state to push elements into an array and then setting that state equal to that array, the final array.
Yep.
Okay.
So we can do that. Did we do to-do lists in class? Because I think that covers most of your requirements. So let me pull that up. Am I going crazy? There we go. Okay.
And can I add like one more parameter to that question? Like,
yep,
putting only like distinct elements in that array.
Yep. Okay, so here's what we have. And if you're like, yes, but I would like to see how we do it with X, that's totally fine. So what we have here is we've got an input. We link the item text to state. We have our button submit. Our button submit triggers our add item. Our add item takes that item from state, puts it in this object with the task name and whether or not it's done or not, and sets that into the items along with all of the existing items using a spread operator. Then we take those items, update the state here, which updates our items here. And because our items are updated here, it re-triggers our items.map. Our items.map returns out a list item for each item and makes that item's task name show up in the list element. Does that meet your requirements of what you were looking for?
Yeah, I think pretty much does. Yeah, can we just add that the distinct part to it? Like,
yes,
in case like only so the it goes over like what's in the array right now. And if it's like get groceries already exists in that array, it doesn't add it.
Yes, so we can do that. There are two ways of doing that. We can do it the manual way, and then we can do it kind of, I don't want to say the hacky way, but the using newer features of JavaScript way of doing it. So I'm going to just for the sake of an example, create a second thing called tasks and set tasks. And we're going to use state, that's going to be an array. And then anytime that come on, VS Code, they're like look at how crazy this is. I can't even see my screen. God damn it. Okay, sorry. Anytime that tasks gets updated, we're going to console log it out. From there, I'm going to say, hey, when I add my item, two ways of doing this. We can say, if my items includes the item text that we are trying to add, if it doesn't include it, then set my tasks to whatever my tasks currently are, plus the item text that I'm trying to add. So we open an integrated terminal, we npm start. All of this is in my console, but basically what we are saying is, hey, when we add the item, grab the item text, compare that to the tasks that we already have. And if this item already exists in those tasks, don't do anything. But if it doesn't include that item, then take that item task and throw it in there. So I say first item, and I hit add item, and it adds my first item. I say second item, and it adds my second item. But then if I do first item again, notice in the array, I still only have first item and second item. It did not add a third first item because we are putting this if statement around it. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is using something called a set, and not a set as in set something into state. It's actually called a set with a capital S. And an a set is like a special array that doesn't allow duplicates. So if we add a new item in that is a duplicate, it will automatically deduplicate that set for us. And then we take that set and convert it back to an array. So you can do this outside here. You can basically say set task to a new set that is going to include all of our current tasks and our item text. And theoretically, this should deduplicate our array. So I say first, I say second, and then I do my first again. And you notice first did not get added to the array because the set is basically deduplicating the array anytime that I add something new to it. The third way of doing it is with a filter, but hopefully that gives you enough to go off of.
Totally. The
I'm
only one so far I knew was comparing the index of mapping over the array and comparing its index of equals -1. How does that? Why -1? Because like it won't
-1 is what the index gets returned if the index is not found.
Oh, so it like pushes it out. Okay.
Yes, yes. So that was a kind of a hacky, not hacky, but a lot of people were like, well, I don't want to really compare. So there is the ability to go through an array and say, hey, go get me the index of this item, right? And that's helpful to say like, hey, I'm trying to update my second task and I don't know where in the array it is. go get me the index of the text second task, and it will tell you where in the index, where in the array it is. The problem with that is if it doesn't find it in the array, it returns out -1. And a lot of developers were like, that's really hacky to have to go get the index of, and then if the index of triple equals -1, that means it's not in the array. I would really like the ability to just say, is this in the array, true or false, instead of having to compare it to -1. So an ES5 or 6 feature was this thing called includes that just searches through the array for whatever we're looking for and returns out true or false. Set is another ES5 or 6 feature that basically allows you to deduplicate an array by using a set. The problem is the set has to be converted back to an array, which is why we use this spread operator here. So index of -1, totally fine to use. Includes is just a newer feature that's saying, hey, if you don't really care about the index, you just want to know if it's in the array or not, you can use this includes function.
This is perfect. Thank you.
Yep. I'm going to save this and commit this to my GitHub repo. So if you want to reference this, it is in week 13, day 3. So if you need any of that code, you can take a look in the CIC my code folder. Okay, let's do the linking example. And then did anyone else have questions? Capstone questions, general JavaScript questions, HTML questions, CSS questions. How in God's name do I do this question? No, are all good? Okay, let's finish up what we were working on last night. If you don't have a copy of this code, I would say just follow along. You don't have to code along with me. I'm going to delete my node modules. I'm going to duplicate this into my day 4. I'm going to take my React portfolio, open that in VS Code. I will start a live share and put that in the chat. I'm going to open an integrated terminal and do my npm install and then my npm start. And close out of this and make sure I'm not hijacking your 3000. Doesn't look like I am. I will close those for now. 3000 here. And I don't know why I put my H1 up here. I'm going to comment that out. Okay. So we rebuilt all of this in React. A lot of it was just moving code over. But what I would like to do is make it so that when I click on one of these buttons, it takes me to a page with that information on it. We won't have time to move over all of the project page code from our HTML, but we are going to make it so the right information shows up on this page. What we did that was different for the people who were in the capstone breakout room last night, we changed up our portfolio section a little bit. We are mapping over our projects and showing a card component. That card component is using this project data to show things up like our name, our summary, and our button text. Well, we could have put all of that information in state. And in fact, we will need to do that when we start making our API calls and have that data show up. But the new thing that we did is that we moved our data into this thing called project data. Project data is an import, just like we import a component. But if we take a look at project data, all project-data.js is exporting out an array with this information in it. That allows us to be able to add a new object down at the bottom here, save it, and automatically have a card be generated for it in the portfolio. So this is just another example of importing and exporting, except this time instead of importing or exporting a component, we're importing an entire array. That array has objects in it, and we are using those objects to generate out our cards that are a separate component. Those cards are taking a prop. That prop is getting used right here. And that prop is giving us access to the name and summary and button text that are living in the project data here. Does anyone have questions about that general flow?
I have a quick one. Why did we not like put a card component in its own file?
That is a good question. You could, and it would work exactly the same way. If we move this card into a card.js, we could import, we would have to export it, and then we could import it over here, and the props and all the data would work exactly the same. Sometimes, and this is really personal preference. You can say, hey, this card is all related, or this card component's all related to the portfolio anyway. So I can just define this component in the same file. It works exactly the same way. To the computer, it doesn't matter. So for you, it's just personal preference of how you like to organize your code. Okay, so I want to change my A tag here. And I need my A tag to be a link tag instead. So I'm going to change it to a link, both opening and closing. I'm going to change my href to a 2. I'm going to make sure that my link is imported in from the router. But I don't really have a place that I'm linking it to yet. I have to set all of that up. So I'm going to make a new file called project details.js. I'm going to do my const project details is equal to a component that returns a div that's got an h1 that says project details. I'm going to export my default project details. And finally, in my app.js, I am going to go up and say, hey, I'm going to make a new object with a pass of project details / an ID. This colon here is saying, hey, ID is not the letter ID that we're looking for in the route. What we're actually looking for is something to be inserted in after the word project details. This colon is basically saying, hey, we're going to send some unique thing in to that ID. And we also want to tie it to the element project details. Now, this is where the magic comes in. We go back to our portfolio and we change our link, and we're going to change it to curly braces because we want to use a template literal. And the template literal is going to go to project details. Sorry, I realized I did not turn the lights back off, and the screen's probably hard to see. Okay, sorry. Then we're going to use our $ curly braces, and we are going to pass in the index that is coming in from a prop. So we add index here because we're using that prop right here. This prop value index here is coming from our map up here. In other words, we're keeping track of what project number we are on in the array. We take that from the map because Loop knows what project number we're on. We pass it into a prop called index. We then access that index in the component and pass it on to our link down here at the bottom. Now, in order to get access to that, let's look at what's going on here. If I hover over this link, look at the very bottom of my window here. No, not that window. The very bottom of my window, it says project details 0. And if I move that over here, I get project details 1, project details 2. Now, when I click on that, my link not only opened my project details page, but that index is accessible in the URL as a parameter. So what we are able to do is say, hey, on the project details page, we need the ID from our params that are coming from an import that are coming from the router. Now we can say we also need our project data from our project data file. And we can say const this project data is equal to our project data and the ID that is coming from the params. That means that we can make, I'm just going to make this white because it's going to drive me crazy otherwise. We can use this project data to show the name of the project. I will go through all of that in a second, but notice we got project details feedback form. If I hit the back button and go click on my Netflix, I get project details Netflix. Okay, let's follow the trickle down through that. All of our project data is coming from projectdata.js. Projectdata.js is just an array. That array contains the name of the project. We go to our portfolio page and we're looping over that array by mapping over it. The map is giving us access to the data inside that object, the name and the summary and the button text and all of that stuff. And then it's also keeping track of the index. Are we on the first project index 0, the first or the second project index 1, or the third project index 2? We take that 0, 1, or 2 index and we pass it down to our card via a prop. We take this prop and we get access to the prop down here in our component. We then take that prop and put it as part of the link to our other page. Then up at app.js, we say, hey, you're going to go to the project details page, but that path is going to contain a special ID. And we know it's special because there's a colon in front of it. That means that when we get to our project details page, we are able to pull out that ID from the params in the router path. Because we are able to get access to that, we pull our project data back in from our project data file. Then we use the ID as the index in that array to get the details about this specific project, the page that we are on. Because we are able to get out just the project's data that we want, we are able to get access to the things like the name and the this project data dot summary, because that data is all included right here. That means we can see the summary right here. If we go back to the home page and pick another project, you see that here. So I know this is like a game of Plinko where it's falling down 9 levels of data, but hopefully you are able to connect what is happening in the link here to ultimately make the data that we linked to show here. It also means that over here, if we change one of the URLs, we can see we get that details from whatever index that we passed as the ID right here. Did anyone get a light bulb moment from that, or is anyone saying WTF? It's a lot. But I'm going to commit this in to the repo right now, so you guys can reference this link, more details link. You can reference this on your capstones. And that ID will actually be coming from the database eventually. We won't be using the index. But if you want to set your data up using a similar structure and have something, maybe not project data, but whatever, you could have your animals or your carbs or your whatever data that you're using. If it's not coming from an API, if it's data that you're generating or that you're putting in yourself, you can use this project data file format kind of as a placeholder to make your content dynamically generate based off of the information that's in this file. We good? Is there anything that we don't understand about this project in general that we would like to touch on or recover? Okay, Amberlyn has a question that will probably take the rest of class. So this is your last opportunity to ask any questions between now and the end of the program for stuff that we've already covered. No, I will take questions about new content starting next week. But any questions on your capstone, anything that you're like, I want to do this, but I don't know where to start. Something that you've been trying to do that isn't working. I'm totally not delaying on Amberlyn's question because it's big. I just want to give everyone an opportunity to ask a question. Okay, then we are going to start on this. So Amberlyn's question is, how do we make it so that we can take a dropdown in React and take whatever value is in the dropdown, pass that to an API, and then have the results of the API show the filtered down data that's showing up from there? So that is what we are going to do. I'm going to do this. I don't recommend anyone follow along with me, but I do recommend that you ask questions as we're going. So I am going to CD to my desktop, to my C5, my code, to my week 16, and to my day 4. And I'm going to npx create React app search API example. We don't need the router because we're going to do this all on one page. However, most React projects require a router. Totally good idea as soon as the React app is created to CD into it and install a router. But in this situation, we don't need it. We do need Lemoyne's Wi-Fi to be a little bit faster, though. So remember all of those packages we were looking at? You can actually see some of the names of them getting installed right in here. If you look very closely, you might even get a think, thank, thunk. Okay. I'm going to open that folder. I'm going to grab the search API example. I'm going to tune out Brandy not being able to contain her laughter. I'm going to open an integrated terminal. I'm going to do my npm start. I'll do a live share on this if you guys want to follow along. Totally don't have to. Go to my app.css, clear that out. I'm going to go to my app.js, clear out this logo. It's almost like we've done this 1,000 times before. Okay. So Amberlyn has a plants API. And what we want to be able to do is be able to filter it by whether or not the plant is edible or not, and what the flower of the color of the flower is. Yes, the flower of the color. That's what I was trying to say. Okay, so we're going to make 2 selects. The first select is going to have an option of yes and a value of true. and an option with a value of false and an option of no. And we're going to label this as edible. And I'm going to make sure that that shows up. And I don't want it to start with a value. So I'm just going to put in an option that is empty. And that way it doesn't start as anything. But when I click on this and change it, that's what I want to update the data on. So I'm going to say on change, edible dropdown. Then I'm going to say const edible dropdown is going to be async because I know I'm going to need an API call. And what we are going to do is get the event from that. And then we are going to say const filter value equals event target value. And I need, this is going to come in as a string, which is fine. Sorry, I had to think about that one. So we've already dug around the documentation to figure out how they want the information passed in. So what we basically do is we are going to make our fetch call to this URL. And this URL happens to include the API key, but we need to include the filter information into that. So we are going to add on an ampersand here, and every API here is different. So you would have to read through the documentation to figure out how to get this filter set up. In this case, we say filter equals, and we're going to use our template literal and take in whatever our filter value is coming in as from the event target value. From there, we can get our data out by awaiting our response.json. I realized I was an impatient API caller and did not put in my await up there. Get this out of here. Now we're going to just console log out the data and pray that this is all working. So I come in here, I pop open my console, I go to my console here, and I say edible yes, and my data comes back with a carrot. I'd say that's edible. And then if I go to my edible no and look at this data, I've got stuff Yorkshire fog. I would say that that is not edible. So that's working so far. So I need to now take that data and make that data show up. So I'm going to say const results and set results is equal to a use state that's going to start out as an empty array. I'm going to take my data, that's a bad, whatever, I'll use that. So I'm going to say set my results to my data.data because it's in an array called data. And then down here, I can put it all in a UL that is going to results.map over my flowers or plants. That plant is going to come out as a list item that has the plant.common name. And then it also has a very pretty image URL. So we'll make that show up. Say there should also be a image tag. It's an src that uses the plant.image URL. So use state is not defined. And, I could turn on my keyboard brightness so I could actually see what I was typing. That would be, they removed it from the keyboard and I don't have it in my control center. I forget what keys they replaced it with, but I'm so annoyed by that. Nope, search results aren't going to work either. That's fine. Oh, now search is going to work. Thank you. There we go. I don't normally look at my keyboard, but I'm making so many typos that I'm like, okay. I will add it to my control center at some point. I also need to throw a key on this, and it looks like my API results have a key included in the plant. So that's the ID I'm going to use as the key. Now I'm going to clear all of this out. I'm going to say editable, yes. And I get out images of a bunch of editable plants, hopefully. These images are huge. So let me say they've got a max height of 50. So that will be tinier. That is. Oh, I put it on the, whoops. Don't limit your LI size, limit your image size. Whoopsie. Okay, now plantain, that's edible. Carrot, that's editable. But if I change it to no, I get my grasses and my clover and my, although clover is, you can make tea out of it. Anyway, so that's all working. So Amber Lynn's question was, what's that? Yes, but your question was, how do we make it work for two things? So that's a little different. But before we get into that, I know I went really fast on this. I would not expect you to follow along at that pace. But does all of this make sense? Is this a good example for how you can make an API work? Anyone have questions on this before we make it more complicated?
Are you making it more complicated, like 2 API calls? I'm just trying to like see how it's gonna work on mine because I make 2 API calls.
Yeah,
One-
we're gonna make it so you can set both drop downs and use the filter information from both of them.
Gotcha.
Shannon, did you have a question?
Okay, so what we did is we ate that call and then with the options, we sorted them out into.
Yeah, so you're on the right track. We looked at what the API supported for filtering before we started this example. Like we did that during the break. So I wouldn't expect you to be able to like know off the top of your head that you can put ampersand filter editable and know that that would work. Like we had to go to the documentation to figure that out. Then we made it work in Postman. And then once we got it working in Postman, that's how we knew what URL to work. But in terms of what we did in class, we made a select. We tied that select to an on-change event. We put in options with values that we knew the API supported. Then when that event triggered, we made the API call, included the information in that API call, whether it's a query params or a body, JSON.stringify, or however it gets into the API. Then based off of those results, we parsed out the JSON, took those results and set them into state. And then once they were set into state, we were able to loop over them to make them show up. I will post this in the repo. However, if you try this exact code after tonight, it will not work because we have to invalidate the API key because it is now live on YouTube. So this exact code won't work, but you can copy it and reference it, and that will be totally fine. Okay, so we are going to add in another layer of complexity. we are going to say, hey, there is another select in here that has a label of flower color. And we are going to add in an option of pink and an option of yellow and an empty option. Now we run into something tricky because we need to know whether or not the first select had a value in it and whether or not the second select had a value in it. So what we're going to do on that is we are going to set up two use states. One that's going to say color and set color is equal to use state. And the other one that says edible and set edible. It'd be a miracle if I spell edible right throughout all of this code. EDIB, not a good thing to type. Okay, now on this select, we're going to make it be tied to an on change, which is going to set our edible to our event target value. Plush, now legal in Syracuse. Check out Armory Square if you haven't. I've heard it is quite large and quite cool to check out. This event is going to set set color to our event target value. And because React is very verbose, we also need to set the value to color and the value to edible. And then I come over here, I make sure that this is still letting me set values. It is. So I am able to come up here and I'm going to change my code up a little bit. I'm going to put it in a use effect instead. And that use effect is going to do this thing called make API call. And we are going to call make API call. And then when do we want this to run? We want this to run whenever the edible or the color changes, which is a good example of a use state without an empty array. It is basically saying, hey, when this changes or this changes, then go make this API call again. And what we want to do is say, hey, this whole thing is now called let URL equal our template literal. And if, why is this grayed out? Oh, here, this is screwed up. Okay, we're back in business. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to say if there is a color set, because if we haven't changed the dropdown, we don't want to filter by that value. But if the dropdown has changed, I want to add on to the end of the URL a template literal that starts with a ampersand and sets the filter flower color, because that's what it's called in the API, to whatever color is set in the state. And if there is an edible dropdown set, I want to do the same thing, except now I'm going to change the URL to include edible. No, I want color to be yellow or 17 to edible. Thank you. Because that is coming from state and the state is coming from our true or false value here. So I come over here, I refresh, I get a bunch of plants that aren't using any filters. And I'm going to say, oh, I don't want any edible things. And I'm going to get filtered out there. And then I'm going to say, I only want pink ones. And there are no flowers that are edible and pink. Are there any flowers that are edible and pink? Okay, that did not work. Clearly. Let's see if it works independently. So let's say, just give me the pink flowers. Nope, it would like me to take my color and fluff right on off. Flower, color. So let's do this. Let's console log our URL. And open this. And there, oh, what's going on here? Send 5D, that's fine. Did we, huh? Why didn't that work? Oh, there are yellow flowers, but there are no pink flowers. I see how it is. That doesn't make any sense, but it is giving me yellow things. So let's just let's look for red flowers instead of pink flowers. Okay. So for whatever reason, there aren't pink flowers, but there are red flowers according to the database. So, okay, now let's say we don't want any edible ones, and that works. That did change the results a little bit. But if we change that to yes, we get, there are only 2 things that have red flowers that are edible according to the database. I would never have guessed pink wasn't going to be in the database, but sometimes you need to be careful about what you're filtering on, because the database may not, for whatever reason, pink isn't an actual flower color in their database. Came close to filling the whole class time. Does anyone have questions about this?
I do.
Yes,
Hello.
Palash, go for it.
While the API data is being loaded, can we display like a loading ... in the
Yes.
select, inside the select as an option itself?
Yes. So it is normally better to tie that to its own state, because there are a lot of components that are changing here. So a couple things that we would want to do to make this a little bit more efficient before this API call is being called. We want to set our results back to an empty array, so the previous results aren't showing while we're pulling in the new results. The other thing we can do is tie this to a new thing that says loading and set loading. That says use state, and this is just going to be a true and a false. We can actually start it out as true. Then we can set our loading as true here. And actually, we want to start it off as false, my bad. And then down here, after the results are set, we can set loading back to false. And then down here, we can say, if it is loading, then show an H1 that says loading ... Otherwise, there should be some results and map over them. So we refresh, we get loading. So I refresh, I get loading ... It shows those results. I go to my flower color and I say yellow. It says loading again. Then once the results are in there, it shows it. And then if we keep on changing these drop downs, we get our loading back and then our results.
Can the loading show as inside the select bar itself, like as an option? Is it possible to do it? Like outside the map, outside the, not the map, outside the default value, maybe? Well, it's okay, then you don't have to do
You
it.
don't really want to do that because if a user selects a value, they don't want to think they selected yellow and then all of a sudden loading is there instead, because they're like, wait, I just selected yellow. Where did my yellow go? So in general, it's a better idea to have a loading component show where the data is going to show up, not in the filters itself. What you could do as an alternative is outside of the select, you could put like a little React spinner, that package that we use, and show some kind of loading icon there. But in general, you want to be careful of not conditionally changing the options, because then your value isn't going to line up with whatever option you just selected, and that gets messy in state. So instead, what I would suggest is put some kind of loading icon right to the right of the select instead of changing the drop-down option there.
Okay. Another question is like inside those options, if we assign them values, like React gets angry and says like use default value instead, something like that. Is it doing it for you?
It is not. You're thinking, I know what error message you're thinking of, but it's not the same. If we're using value and on change here, and whatever default value we are setting in via the state, it is okay to do that. It doesn't like when we use only value and we don't have an on change, and that's where you get the default value error message, I believe.
Yes, you're right. How do we fix that again?
Well, no,
Without adding an on change.
not even getting that for some reason. No idea why I'm not getting it. But basically, you should, if you are, if you have a value, you should have an on change, or you can start your drop down with a specific value by using default value instead of the value and the on change.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. Basically, we have changed this, going back to a quiz question that I didn't cover in class. We are changing this from an uncontrolled input to a controlled input by putting the value and the on change on it and then tying that to state. Okay, it is 8:30. I will stick around in case there are any questions. I am uploading this example to GitHub. I'm actually going to take out the API key because I don't want that in GitHub and it's going to get invalidated anyway. GitHub is actually very good about scanning your code and then yelling at you if you make an API key public. They like freeze the whole repository and all hell breaks loose. So search API example. When we start building our own APIs, we will be able to build kind of the flip side of this and see how we can make the actual like filter query work. So we'll have that as an example to go off of. Amberlyn, if you want to go invalidate that API key or generate another one, and then make sure you just update it in your own code. All right, any other questions for the evening?
Max, before you go, I need to steal you for a sec.
What, Jen?
I got compiled with problems.
Oh, great. You guys are
It's
welcome
just-
to head out. Jen, go ahead, share the screen.
It was just that I was trying to catch up from yesterday. So I just like recreated all your files and then copy and pasted, and I was gonna go back through and kind of like put my stuff in where your stuff is supposed to be.
Yep, really quick fix on this one. You set up SAS files. And so whenever we use our first SAS file, we also have to install the SAS.
I was putting a dash in between that and it wasn't working. I thought it was install dot or dash SAS. That's fine.
There you go.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions for the evening?
Yeah, I had a quick one.
Sure.
I remember you had put an empty array bracket under the U state. I remember we usually put an object in there, and I know I got here a bit late and I was on and off. What was the reason why you kept it empty?
Yeah, so couple ways of doing it. If we don't put, the reason I put an empty array here is because I wanted to make sure that when this map ran to run over the plants, it had something to loop over. So even though there wasn't anything in it to get started, if we don't start it out as an empty array, it's going to throw an error and it's going to say like cannot read function map of undefined or something like that. So we started out as an empty array here. So even though there's nothing in it, the map is like, okay, I know how to run a map, but there's nothing over it in it to map over it. Then once we do this loading, now that this loading is going to trigger, it's going to say, well, something's loading in, so I'm not even going to bother mapping over it. Because of that, you can now take these out and it won't cause any issues because the loading is going to supersede the mapping over of everything. So it depends how you want to set it up. If you're handling it, so you're saying, hey, I'm making sure the map isn't running if there isn't any data in there, or if we're trying to load it in, you can just leave that U state with empty parentheses. But if you're saying, hey, I am going to map over that data eventually, and I'm not going to do a loading indicator, you can start it out as an empty list so that it knows how to loop over it. There's just nothing in it to loop over.
That make perfect sense because I had the same error message when I was when I did the same thing for my capstone, but then I just ended up putting an object to it, so it went through. But that made a lot of sense. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great question. Any other questions for the evening?
No, but Max, I would stay out of the chat.
What'd you say?
I said I'd stay out of the chat if I were you.
Oh, don't worry. I get a transcript saved on my computer.
Man.
You probably have fun reading those.
Yeah, but.